Hello, welcome to a new video here on something very different than what I've been talking about before, which is typically airplanes. Today we're going to talk about helicopters, and the reason is if you caught my video with the Eclipse 360, that was kind of my first exposure to a Blade helicopter. Now that wasn't my Eclipse 360, that was a friend of mine. I did the repaint on it, and it really kind of re-sparked that interest in helicopters and had me really thinking, how do I get started? So let's take a step back here. When I originally wanted to get into the RC flying hobby, helicopters is actually where I wanted to get started. I was looking for something that I could fly in my yard or at a park or in a smaller enclosed area. And so I thought, helicopter, that should be the easiest way to do that versus an airplane that you need a great big area for. So I started with a couple of those cheap coaxial helicopters, the stuff that you would find, from online retailers like an Amazon, or even from, the ones you see in the shopping malls. So you can tell it's definitely been a while because I said I got one from a shopping mall. And I wasn't very successful with those helicopters, right? They didn't really fly very well. I wasn't really good at what I was doing. And so I moved over to fixed wing. And I've been flying fixed wing airplanes for about the last decade or so. And I think it's time for me to kind of get back to where I originally wanted to get started, was with helicopters. And so the hard part for me is trying to figure out, well, how do you get started in helicopters? And that's not necessarily an easy answer. For the most part, I started asking around of my club members that I fly with, people online, friends that have been in the hobby for a long time, because I'm like, I am lost. How do I get started? And just about every single person I talked to pointed to me in the same direction. They would usually ask two questions. One, do you want to fly primarily just indoors, or do you want to fly outside? And if you want to fly outside, what kind of flying do you want to do? Do you want to get into sport aerobatic 3D style helicopters, or do you want to do something maybe a little bit more like on the scale side? And for me, being a big scale civilian and warbird guy, scale helicopters is my ultimate endpoint. I don't know what helicopter that will be yet, but what interests me the most is flying a helicopter that looks like a real military or a real civilian helicopter, and flying in a very scale manner. And I want to do that outside. I'm not looking for a little coaxial that I can fly around the house. I want to fly outside, and I want to fly in a bigger area, and I want to fly what looks like a scale helicopter. So with all of that, everybody pointed me to this guy right here, the Blade 230S Smart Ready to Fly helicopter. Now, this is, by all practical purposes, a pod and boom style helicopter, meaning it is kind of that bulbous nose on it with the boom coming out the back with a tail. It looks like a 3D aerobatic helicopter. It doesn't look like a scale helicopter. Well, that's okay, because the skill set that I'm going to learn flying this will translate down the road. Now, it's interesting to note, when I said I wanted to fly this outside and kind of fly in a more scale manner, that's when people said, all right, that makes the distinguishing factor between a collective pitch and a fixed pitched helicopter. If I was going to fly primarily just indoors around the house and not really do any aerobatics, and I don't have to counter wind, and I'm not looking to fly in a scale manner, I'm just kind of looking at flying around inside here without any stunts, then a collective pitch or a fixed pitch helicopter like the Blade 120 would have been just fine for that. But if you want to fly outside and you want to fly in more of a scale manner, you want the helicopter to behave like a real helicopter, then you gotta have a collective pitch helicopter rather than a fixed pitch. So a collective pitch helicopter, the blades change their pitch to increase or decrease the amount of lift, just like a real helicopter. So everybody pointing to me to the direction of the Blade 230S. A lot of guys that have been flying helicopters for a while will tell you that they started on the original version 1 230, and they recommended that this is a great starting point. So a couple other pieces of the puzzle here to finish out the how to get started before we get the helicopter out of the box here is the new Ready to Fly version here does not include a battery and charger. So I have here the new Smart G2 Power Stage bundle. The Power Stage bundle comes with two things here. It is a battery and charger, so it completes what you need to fly. So let me get this out here. We have a 850 3S 30C pack here. So we got that little guy here. And then we have our little S120 charger inside this box here. And then of course this little adapter that goes from the IC2 to IC3, which will go in this charger. Of course, this will also work just fine on a number of the Spectrum Smart chargers as well. Now it is a G2 battery, so you do need a Spectrum Smart charger for this particular one. So you can either use the S120 that's here, or you can pick any other one of the chargers as well. So this is what it does to complete the bundle. So being ready to fly, it does include the transmitter and the helicopter, but I did need a battery for it, and I thought, well, you know what, going with the power stage bundle here is not a bad idea, because that gives me an extra small S120 charger that I can use when I travel, or just use when I'm at the field, something like that. So the power stage bundle completed the package here. The other piece of the equation, and this is, I have the box here basically as a representative, but real flight is something that is absolutely instrumental in learning how to fly helicopters. So this is the box for 9.5S, which then you could update into the new version of Evolution on Steam, which is what I've done. I had 9.5S updated to Evolution. Even if you have the Trainer Edition, so any of the versions of Real Flight, the Trainer Edition or Evolution, they have a helicopter in there. And I've been told that the best thing to do is, before you start to fly this guy, is to go ahead and start on Real Flight. Take some time, practice. Can you hover the helicopter? Can you fly it in a circle, a figure eight? Can you land the helicopter back down again? You can try that in the 3 modes, beginner, intermediate, and expert mode, just like you would with the real helicopter. But it's going to get you used to the fact that I'm like, okay, this is going to fly very different than an airplane. So you're going to have to learn the controls, and you really actually forces you to end up using your rudder stick a heck of a lot more to turn the helicopter in the yaw axis than you typically do in an airplane. So it forces you to kind of use that. And if you're a pilot who doesn't use a lot of rudder, that could be a problem if you want to move to helicopters. So by all means, if you're thinking about getting into helicopters like I am, start with Real Flight first. And like I said, Trainer Edition or Evolution, you can start with a number of the helicopters on there and just practice the basic maneuvers of flying the helicopter in beginner mode. Once you get comfortable with that, then it's time to get out the helicopter. So for me, I've actually already been flying on Evolution. I've been flying the 230S now for, I don't know, probably a little over a year now. Not exclusively every single time I get into Real Flight, but I try to take maybe once or twice a week, take 15 minutes or so and fly the 230S. So I start to get more familiar with how to operate a helicopter and how that is very different than flying an airplane. So that's what you need to kind of get started, right? You need a helicopter, you need Real Flight, and if you need a supporting battery and charger, you'll need the power stage bundle, and then you can go ahead and get started. So with that, let me go ahead and get the helicopter out of the box here, and we'll kind of talk about that just a little bit, all right? So let me move some things around, and I'll be back in a second. All right, I am back. Got the helicopter and the transmitter out of the box, as well as the instruction sheet and a little tool bag, zip ties, bind plug, a few other little odds and ends in here that comes along with the kit. So there's not much to get out of the box on this guy, but unlike an airplane, where you typically get the airplane out of the box and the box goes into the trash unless you have an ultra micro, the Blade 230S box works fantastic as a carrying case and a way to keep your helicopter kind of safe and away from getting damaged when you're not flying the helicopter. So you got the little foam piece here that keeps the blades secured, and then you can go ahead and set this in the box and transport it to the flying field in a little carrying case. So don't get rid of the box once you get the helicopter out. So With that said, let's go over just a few things on the helicopter. This is really the first time that I've seen this one in person. I got it just got it out of the box here now, and of course it is this bright orange color, which will be great for visibility, so you can see the helicopter, because it's going to be quite a bit different when you are flying a helicopter versus an airplane. That orientation is definitely something that I know I'll have to work on. And of course, you want to make sure that you take off kind of looking down the tail, nose away from you, kind of, in this vantage point, so that when you move the controls, it kind of moves the same direction as the helicopter is facing, just to kind of make it a little bit easier for you. Like I said before, it is a kind of traditional pod and boom style. This is kind of more of the pod and your booms here. It's got the tail rotor on the back. It's got an actual motor driven versus like a shaft or rubber band. This does have the 3 modes of safe in it. So you have beginner mode, which will lower the head speed of the rotors here, as well as limiting the pitch and bank, just as it does with an airplane. When you go into intermediate mode, the head speed speeds up, and then you have more ability to pitch and roll the helicopter. And then, of course, in experience mode, it turns that off. And if you were going to go down the path of 3D flying and all the crazy stuff that goes on with that, then that's most certainly your end goal. For me, the way I fly, I will probably leave this helicopter in beginner mode probably forever, because in beginner mode, it flies very much like I am expecting to fly a scale helicopter. It has about the right amount of pitch, the right amount of bank, that it provides me with the flying feel that I'm looking for in the flying experience that I want from a helicopter. Even though this doesn't look like a scale helicopter, I'm going to fly it just as it was a scale one. Now, you do want to also fly in relatively low wind, especially if you're getting started in this, and low wind to no wind conditions are ideal. However, that can be difficult to find unless it's like pretty much at sunset. So one thing that I'm going to do to mine here is, there used to be a version of this called the 230 Night Edition, and the Night Edition had rotor blades that would light up with LEDs. It had LED lights on the tail as well as in the canopy, and those lights are still available today from Horizon Hobby, and they go on with adhesive tape. Now, I'm not going to do the rotor blades, but I am going to do the navigation lights on the tail and the canopy lights. And it's not to fly at night, it's to fly kind of at dusk or in those low light conditions, just to help me orientate the helicopter just a little bit more. These things can most certainly play tricks on your eyes when they're in kind of this type of orientation. And so I've already identified that as something I want to make sure that I don't run into an orientation problem. So I bought those lights. You will need a few adapters to work with the IC2 battery and ESC connection. So it just takes a few adapters, and you can go ahead and do that. I'll probably cover that a little bit later once I actually put the whole thing together and see how it works. But that's something I'm going to do to kind of help out myself as I get started with the helicopter. The other nice thing to do is, so after you've practiced on real flight, you have the helicopter. Before I go into the thing I was going to cover, is make sure you read the manuals. There's a lot of setup and work that needs to be done in a helicopter that most of us coming from the fixed wing world don't have to worry about. So where I was going is, after you've practiced on the sim and you have the helicopter and you've followed the instruction manual and you have it perfectly set up, I would definitely say to seek out the advice of a local flying club who is their local kind of helicopter pilot, or find a helicopter pilot in your area and work with them as well to kind of go over and make sure everything is set up properly to have the most success possible in flying. It's a very different flying a helicopter, getting it set up and getting it ready to go, than it is an airplane. So seek out some help. And if you can, have them actually test fly your helicopter first, make sure everything is good to go, and have them as kind of a resource or as an instructor to help you out when you get started. That's what I'm going to do. I have a few friends that fly helicopters, and I'm most certainly going to leverage their knowledge so that I can become even more successful. Now, if you notice, I do have the ready to fly version here with the DXS radio. Now, if you've seen my content before, you know that I fly on an NX8, and you're like, well, why are you flying on this guy when you have an NX8? Well, the reason is because helicopters are so much more complicated to set up and get going. I decided it was worth the little bit of extra expense to go to the ready-to-fly version with the DXS for two reasons. One, it gives me an opportunity to try it as somebody who maybe you don't have an NX8 or a programmable radio and you're just new into the hobby. If you're a fixed-wing guy moving into rotary, you have a nice computerized radio, but the setup might be a bit intimidating, at least it is for me. So by spending a little extra money to go with the ready-to-fly version, this guy's already set up and programmed to fly the helicopter. I don't have to try to figure it out. Eventually, once I get comfortable flying the helicopter, I'm comfortable with how to control it, how to get it all trimmed, and everything is exactly where I want it to be, then I'll probably look at setting this up on my NX8. But to get started, I'm going to use this DXS that's already been factory programmed to work with this helicopter. So based on that, this is kind of how my approach is going to be to get started in flying helicopters. So seek out some expert advice, and they all said, yeah, this is your starting point, the 230S. Start with real flight. I have real flight evolution. I've been practicing. And typically, I think if I remember correctly, I was once told about an hour of real flight is equivalent to 15 minutes of actual flight time. So if you do, 15 minutes of real flight 4 times a week, there you go. You have your 1 hour, or basically one time out to the field with maybe a battery or two. Obviously you're not going to get 15 minutes out of a single pack. So I definitely suggest getting a couple batteries to go along with this guy. That way, when you do have a good flying condition, you have an instructor that can help you out, you can actually get a couple flights in and really start to learn the craft. I'm really excited for this. I've been wanting to get into helicopters for quite a while. They're very intimidating to me. They're just even sitting here looking at it, it kind of spooks me out a little bit. They're very different than an airplane, and I feel comfortable flying an airplane. I grew up around airplanes. I've flown airplanes. I've flown in airplanes. I have flown, probably, 50 plus RC airplanes, and I have well over 2,000 flights in my logbook on airplanes. But helicopters are very different. So hopefully with the help of real flight and with an instructor and friends to kind of help me out, I can be successful in flying this beautiful Blade 230S helicopter. So if you guys are interested in learning how to get involved in RC helicopters, hopefully I've given you a little bit of a roadmap on how to do that. So if you guys got any questions, I'll do my very best to answer them. I am not a helicopter expert by any means. This is, of course, my very first helicopter, so it's going to be a bit of a learning experience, but I'm excited to give this a shot. I think this is the right helicopter to try it. I think I have the best simulator to learn with, and I have a wonderful group of friends that I can lean on for expertise. So I think with all that, I have a pretty good recipe for success. That is assuming that, of course, I sit down and make sure I read this manual and really truly understand what's in here and how to make sure that the helicopter is set up properly. This is not something you just throw a battery in and then go crank it up. I may do that with a couple of my ultra micro planes where I'm like, you know what, put a battery in it, let's go fly and see what it does. No, this is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to make sure that I take my time and thoroughly check everything out and make sure I have a really good understanding of the product before I go ahead and put it in the air. Because this thing is so beautiful, I do not want to crack it up on the very first flight. That's for sure. So it's an exciting journey. Helicopters are going to be pretty cool to get into. And then my eventual goal is scale military or scale civilian helicopters. So that's where I'm going to go next. And I think my starting point is right here. So if you guys got any questions, let me know.